The most interesting things I've noticed at training camp this week for the Cowboys. I'm going to talk about Jaylon Smith's new contract and how unbelievable it is. But I start today with the most intriguing position battle playing out right now. It's down to two guys for one spot. Maybe. The Cowboys will most likely keep 5 receivers on their roster this year. Amari Cooper, Tavon Austin, Randall Cobb, Michael Gallup. There's 4. The 5th is presumably Noah Brown. Now, Noah Brown hasn't practiced at all yet in training camp and most likely will be physically unable to perform once the season starts. So probably start the year on the PUP list, meaning there will be one roster spot open for either Cedric Wilson or Devin Smith. Now, Cedric Wilson is most likely to make the team. Why? Well, because the Cowboys drafted him, and teams usually stick by the guys they drafted. But I think they're going to end up keeping Devin Smith, because Devin Smith has more upside than Cedric Wilson. Look, Devin Smith was a 4.2 40 guy coming out of Ohio State, and he had 2 ACL tears in the same knee back-to-back seasons, which is why he completely fell off the radar. Now, he probably lost some of that 4.2 40 speed, but he's the one that's impressed the most throughout training camp and in preseason action. And lastly, to Jaylon Smith. Congratulations to Jaylon Smith on signing a 5-year extension worth $64 million, 35.5 of that is guaranteed. And that's absolutely shocking. Not the deal itself or that he got it, but rather that he's here right now in a position to get a 5-year extension. Jaylon Smith shouldn't be here. He shouldn't. I'm sure you recall that Jaylon Smith suffered a horrible knee injury at the end of his career at Notre Dame in the Fiesta Bowl. He tore up his knee. LCL, MCL, PCL, the whole thing. Every CL on his knee was done, and he had severe nerve damage, to the point that he had a condition known as drop foot, meaning he couldn't feel his foot when it dropped onto the ground. Now, when you look at medical history from trying to return from an injury like this, what Jaylon Smith is doing is unprecedented. Only 2 players in the history of the National Football League have ever returned after suffering an injury like this. And those guys were already in the league. And when they came back, they were a shell of their former selves and their careers were basically over. Other guys have attempted to come back and weren't able to do it. But Jaylon Smith was attempting to jump up to the next level and get back to the player that he was, a dominant pass rushing force, a top 5 pick. Now, the Cowboys took him in the 2nd round, which was a shock. It was, considering the medical history suggested he might never play football again. And even if he does, it'd be a miraculous comeback, but he'd be a shell of his former self. He wouldn't be close to the level that he was at playing at Notre Dame. So it seemed like the Cowboys were absolutely foolish for taking him in that spot. But they knew. They knew, one, the doctor that performed the surgery on him is the team doctor, and that his diagnosis was probably more optimistic than most. But they also knew Jaylon Smith, the person. He was the right individual to be able to overcome this kind of adversity. And when we first met Jaylon Smith, his first training camp, it almost seemed disingenuous. Like, who's this fake dude that seems so overly optimistic? But the more you get to know Jaylon Smith, the more you realize, no, that's completely genuine. That's who he is, and it takes that kind of a person to be able to overcome what he overcame. Remember, what he's doing right now has never been done before in the history of the NFL. Never. Year 1, he didn't play. Year 2, he played and looked horrible. In fact, down the stretch of his first season that he played, offensive coordinators were completely taking advantage of his inability to go sideline to sideline. Offenses, especially down the stretch of the season a couple of years ago, were feasting on Jaylon Smith trying to go sideline to sideline. It was horrible. You felt bad for him. So you go back to last year in the Cowboys defense, there were low expectations for them, and Jaylon Smith took the world by storm. I'd say by mid-season, Jaylon Smith was playing at the same level that he was playing at Notre Dame. Unbelievable. This is overcoming adversity. The thing is, in sports, athletes and coaches and executives are constantly talking about overcoming adversity. Something that is ingrained in athletics. Any other example of overcoming adversity pales in comparison to what Jaylon Smith has just done. What Jaylon Smith has just done is nothing short of remarkable. So no matter what you're going through in your life, no matter what adversity you are going through, some small, some enormous, remember Jaylon Smith, the unbelievable ability of the human mind and the human body to overcome the most adverse situations known to man. There's so many examples like this throughout the world. You just have to notice them.